11:50 a.m., November 15th, 1979. 30 minutes after departing Chicago, passengers aboard an American Airlines 727 bound for Washington, D.C. hear a muffled thump in the baggage hold, followed by a sucking sound.
The crew doesn't know what happened. All they know is a big bang went off. All the passengers in the cabin are now putting on their oxygen masks, and there's a lot of smoke, and they've got to get that plane down.
The plane descends at over 600 miles an hour, twice the normal speed of approach, as fire trucks and ambulances scramble to the runway.
Thankfully, the pilot is able to successfully land the plane. All the passengers are safely evacuated, and at least 12 passengers are rushed to the hospital for potential smoke inhalation.
The terror and trauma are palpable, but it could have been so much worse.
Eventually, they manage to extinguish the fire, and they discover the source of the explosion. It's a pipe bomb that's housed inside a wooden box. It's wrapped in craft paper and been completely covered in stamps to make it look like a nondescript package. It's been mailed from a fairly large facility in suburban Chicago.
Now, at the time, airmail wasn't regularly scanned by metal detectors before being put onto a plane, so the bomb was able to make it very easily onto the aircraft with no real suspicion by anyone.
The FBI conducts a nationwide search for any bombings that used similar devices and find two matches in a pair of attacks at Chicago's Northwestern University. The first took place a year and a half earlier. Agents from the FBI, ATF, and U.S. Postal Service now join forces and race to identify the attacker. They also give the manhunt a new case name, Unabomber, short for University and Airline Bomber. And the attacker? He's now known as the Unabomber. This mysterious attacker will continue to strike for many years to come.
Over the course of 18 years, the Unabomber sends 16 bombs to homes, institutions, and offices across the country. In all, 23 people are injured, 3 people die, and millions across America are terrified. This is no longer a localized incident.
On June 24th, an envelope shows up at the New York Times.
This envelope doesn't contain a bomb, it contains a letter. And what's written in that letter raises the possibility for the first time that the Unabomber might not be working alone.
The letter is supposedly written by a member of a group with the initials FC, which stands for Freedom Club.
The author of the letter claims that they're writing this letter to the Times for two main reasons. One, to establish the group's identity, to let people know who Freedom Club is. The second reason is so that they can provide a secret code in all further communication so that no one else can take responsibility for bombings that are carried out by Freedom Club.
The public doesn't know this at the time, but each of the devices that the Unabomber had sent had contained a metal disc with the letters FC engraved in them. And that disc was designed to withstand the blast, so it's kind of like a calling card.
The Unabomber then sends more letters to the Washington Post and the New York Times. But these are very different and give investigators fresh insights into the bomber's motives.
He sends a letter to the Washington Post and the New York Times saying that he will, FC will, stop bombings if they publish their 35,000-word manifesto. What is this manifesto about? It's a diatribe against the industrial complex that computerization is going to kill our society and must be thwarted. If the papers publish his manifesto, FC says they will stop bombing.
Ultimately, the FBI tell the New York Times and the Washington Post, go ahead and publish the manifesto. We realize that there's a risk involved, but it might be worth the risk.
The Washington Post published his words only after speaking with Attorney General Janet Reno and FBI officials. The Justice Department hopes to use his own words to lead investigators to one of the most hunted men in the country.
It's now late 1995, 17 years after the Unabomber first began his terrifying attacks. Linda Patrick, a philosophy professor from Schenectady, New York, is in Paris on sabbatical.
She's reading an English language newspaper with excerpts of the recently published Unabomber's manifesto, and the words seem eerily similar to something she's read before. This writing contains striking similarities to some letters that had been sent to her husband, David Kaczynski, from his estranged brother. He was furious that David was marrying Linda despite never having met her, and he wrote long, vengeful letters disparaging their marriage and the institution of marriage itself.
He says to Linda, I think there's 1 in 1,000 chance that my brother could be the Unabomber. And she says, well, 1 in 1,000 is significant. We need to start thinking about this.
And that's when Dave looks up the manifesto. He's able then to get all the letters he's received over the years from his brother. As he and his wife look through all of these letters, they realize that there is a very striking similarity.
Ted Kaczynski is born in Chicago, Illinois in 1942 to working-class parents. But he's an incredibly gifted student, especially in mathematics. He actually scores a 167 on an IQ test, and he even skips 2 grades in high school, graduates by the age of 15, and is immediately accepted to Harvard. Once he finishes at Harvard, he then goes on to University of Michigan to obtain his master's and then later his doctorate degree.
He's quickly hired by the University of California at Berkeley. He's put on a tenure track as a professor in his mid-20s. And so this is a guy who seems to have a huge future ahead of him. So that's one story of Ted Kaczynski. The other story of Ted Kaczynski is that this is someone who always felt alienated from his peers. He's always had difficulty making friends.
At Berkeley, he's not well liked by his students. They think that he's dull and unengaged and pathologically shy. And so in 1969, he resigns without any explanation. In 1971, he moves to a tiny remote cabin in Lincoln, Montana, where he lives a life off the grid without electricity or running water.
Despite the peaceful setting, his mind is not at rest.
Now Ted Kaczynski is living off the grid, as he wanted, but he's still writing letters to his family. Diatribes against the government and socialization and computerization. Ted Kaczynski is not a happy guy. The FBI is optimistic. Now they have a real lead. They speak with David, they speak with Linda, and more that they compare letters that he's written to them in the past, they think they have their guy.
On April 3rd, 1996, the FBI finally shows up at the Montana cabin.
They bring their operations teams to Lincoln, Montana. They have snipers. They have everyone ready in case things go wrong. Probably most importantly for them, they want to have all of their evidence intact.
It's a treasure trove of evidence.
Bomb-making materials. There are things linked to the attacks, like the Smith Corona typewriter that was used to type copies of the manifesto, that was used to type some of the letters.
They find 40,000 pages, journal pages, which explain every single bomb, how to build a bomb even. But Ted Kaczynski is proud of his work, and he writes about it in these journals.
Under the bed, they find an aluminum-wrapped package addressed to an aerospace company in Texas. And sure enough, there is a live bomb inside.
One of the longest and most expensive manhunts in U.S. history is finally over. In January of 1998, Ted Kaczynski pleads guilty and is moved to an isolated cell in a supermax prison in Colorado, where he dies by suicide in 2023. David Kaczynski, long torn by his decision to turn in his own brother, collects the $1 million reward, but turns it over to the families of his brother's victims.